ManeHustle Media Podcasts are recorded on the ancestral lands of the Chumash, Tongva, Karanka, and Hohokam people, and I wish to pay my respects to the people of those nations, both past and present.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Queer and Far Podcast, a travel podcast from a couple of queer femmes. I am your Sir Auntie, Sharmane Fury, a.k.a. daBlasianBlerd, the busiest mixed-race, bi-gender, bisexual, polyamorous, atheist, comic book nerd, cat mom, and two-time Asian American Podcasters Association's Golden Crane Award-winning podcaster in this podcasting game. And my co-host, as always,
is still Shae Nahnigans and still a noob. I wish I could do what you could just do.
I mean, I just haven't found myself on this show yet, so I'm still goofy about it. But today we are being joined by a very special guest, our first guest on Queer and Far Podcast. Shae, do you want to introduce our guest a little bit?
Well, this is my friend Quadzilla, aka
Quadzilla!
I
had to do it.
We had to do it.
Yeah.
And I met this lovely person on TikTok, and because our presence here, or what we want to make this podcast about, is about traveling while marginalized. I really wanted to get the insight of traveling while disabled. And there's different variants of disability, right? And so my friend Lindsey, or Quadzilla.
Yeah.
Okay. Volunteered to be on our show to talk about this today. So thank you so much, Lindsey, for being here. Would you like to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah. So my name is Lindsey Freisinger. I have my doctorate of nursing practice. I just received that from University of Michigan in May. And I have been an incomplete quadriplegic for about 10 years now. And in that time, I have traveled quite a bit for school at University of Michigan. I live in Oregon right now, and schooling was online. But prior to the pandemic, I had to travel to Michigan once a month. So I flew back and forth to Michigan once a month for that. And then I've traveled since my injury via plane. I've traveled to New Orleans, to Florida, to obviously Michigan, to Hawaii, and to Los Angeles, and to San Diego. So I think those are the main places I've traveled by plane. And then by RV, I've done 2 cross-country trips to Michigan and back. And then like every summer we do a 4 to 6 week trip where we, like this year we went to the coast of Oregon and went up and down the coast. Another year we spent it in Montana. And so every year during the summer, because my husband was a high school chemistry teacher. So during the summer when I had off from school and he had off from school, we would just travel in our RV that we have outfitted with ropes and things, because I can walk some. And so there's ropes for supports for me to get around. And we've made it as accessible as possible for me, but it's very individualized. Like it is made for my disability. And, someone with a different level of paralysis likely wouldn't be able to use the RV the way that I have it set up. So that's kind of, that's a little bit about me. So I grew up in Southeast Michigan. And after graduating nursing school at University of Michigan, I was recruited to UCLA, and I worked in their pediatric ICU and peds cardiothoracic ICU. I was recruited out there because I worked with the first child who had this external heart device that was basically supporting her until she got a heart transplant. That was from Germany. It's called a Berlin heart. I worked with her during my nursing school experience at University of Michigan, and UCLA wanted to start doing Berlin hearts. And I was trained by the man who invented it, the procedure. and everything. And so they recruited me out there as a brand new nurse, because I could come in and teach people how to use the Berlin heart and how to care for it properly. So I worked there for 3 years. And then my college boyfriend, we were together for about 7 years. He got into law school at Arizona State University. So we moved to Arizona, and I got into school at Midwestern University in Arizona for anesthesia. And in the year between us moving and me starting school, I worked as a trauma ICU nurse at the county hospital in downtown Phoenix. Mm-hmm. So I saw everything, and there's no helmet laws in Arizona, mm-hmm. and people ride motorcycles year round. Mm-hmm. So that kind of gives you an idea of a lot of what I saw there. There was a lot of bad trauma, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Gunshots, stabbings, those kinds of things. I took care of, the prisoners mm-hmm. came to us that had, been brutalized in prison. And so, yeah, we saw everything. And so when, prior to this, we were talking about triggers. When I talk about, like, not a lot can trigger me because I've kind of seen it.
Yeah, you've seen quite a lot.
I've dealt with it all. I've dealt with, patients, families, the physicians, surgeons. I worked as a scrub tech when I was in nursing school. So I've been dealing with surgeon personalities since I was 17 years old, mm-hmm. and, standing up to that. And then, I did anesthesia school, and during anesthesia school, during my residency, I had to travel for that. So I lived in a small town in Anaconda, Montana for 6 months. And then after that, I went down to New Mexico, and I was in Farmington, New Mexico, taking care of people there was a reservation there. And so I was taking care of the Native American population, indigenous population there. And that was, there was a lot of sadness, but it was an amazing connection. And I got to share a lot of culture with my patients. They were so appreciative of a good anesthetic that afterwards they would bring me food or gifts, or, but they were like handmade, very thoughtful things. That I have a bookshelf in my room that I call my sentimental bookshelf, that has every little trinket and thing that I've collected over the years of traveling across the United States and just meeting people, right? Meeting families. And I've just always loved humans, and how humans are always so different and amazing, and they have such, you can connect on a great level if you just come with humility to people and say, I don't know about your culture, but if you want to share it with me, I'd love to learn. That's kind of how I approach it always. And whatever you want to share with me, I mean, it makes me cry when people share culture with me. I met a Nigerian man on TikTok the other night in a live, and he was, he's going to make TikTok videos cooking some food so that I can then make the recipes at home. And it just, things like that, it just like touches my heart in a way that I can't explain, because it's just so, the human connection, you can't get enough of it. And then after New Mexico, I was in McAllen, Texas, which is kind of in the Gulf region, right on the border of Mexico. Like, I was a mile away from the border. And I was there for 6 months. And February 15th of 2013, I had a weekend that I didn't have call. And so my friend Stephanie and I, who were in anesthesia school together in the residency there, decided to drive up to Austin to go meet her husband. And on the drive, it was the middle of the day, sunny, beautiful day out. The speed limit was 75 miles per hour. Stephanie was asleep, and I had an iPhone with the directions on it, but it was back when our iPhones didn't talk to us. And you had to put in the code to then open it. Like every time it wouldn't stay open with the map. So I had to look down to put in the code because a junction was coming up, and I wanted to see, do I stay on or do I, get off at this junction? And in that time there was a pothole that I hit, and then I overcorrected and I hit the rumble strip and then fishtailed and ended up hitting the grass in the median, and that flipped my truck. So my truck flipped 7 times and we were going northbound. It ended up in the southbound side, and we did not hit a single car. I was conscious through the entire thing. I felt my neck break, which was pretty intense. And I knew that I had broken my neck. Like, I knew it. We were upside down, which was great because your blood pressure drops precipitously when you get it. It's called spinal shock. And so all of your blood vessels just dilate. So my blood pressure was like 60/30. But because I was upside down, I maintained perfusion. So like the blood and oxygen was getting to my brain. So I didn't end up with a brain injury, which I would have ended up with a brain injury and an anoxic. It's called an anoxic brain injury. And so, and I was able to stay conscious. And when people came to the car and wanted to unbuckle our seatbelts and get us out,
you told them to leave
you
alone.
They panic, right? They see fluids and stuff leaking out. And I'm like, no, don't touch us. Take my key out of the ignition. Like I was able to I freaked out for the first probably 45 seconds. I just screamed like, no. And then suddenly my brain just went into ICU mode. Just like, I have to control this situation as much as possible. So when people showed up, I told them to check for a pulse and breathing on Stephanie because she was not responding. She had a pulse and was breathing. She'd been knocked out and had a very small brain bleed that it took her 2 months to recover from that. She had a fractured rib, a fractured scapula, contusion on her lung, the brain bleed. But they took her in life flight. She was in the ICU for 2 days. She was out of the hospital in 5 days and recovered in 2 months. She got pregnant in the 2 months and then went on to finish anesthesia school. And she now has 4 beautiful children. So the fact that Stephanie survived and thrived afterwards and was able to get back to her baseline, that helped me heal a lot. Because I would have internalized that the guilt would have been a lot for me to try and work through. And so, as much as I still feel awful that I put her through that experience, I know that she's doing wonderfully in life, Awful things happen to us, traumatic things happen, but there can be a lot of beauty that comes out of it. I know that my journey for like this deconstruction type work, because prior to my accident, I was definitely a white feminist. Like I wanted to be a white man, wanted a seat at the table, that kind of thing. But I did not think intersectionally at all. I thought of myself like, well, I'm not racist, right? Like I mean, that's just, I was living my best life, completely oblivious to any struggles around me other than my own, right? And then my accident happened, and that spurred me to, first of all, the anesthesia school screwed me over and wouldn't even give me the degree. And so I was like, all right, bet I'm going to go back to school and change shit. Like, I'm not going to sue you guys, because getting money is not like, that's not going to help the situation. I'm going to change the system. And so that's when I went back to school and I call it my second master's, because even though they didn't give me my first master's, I fucking earned it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my second master's from University of Michigan in systems, populations, and leadership. So it's akin to a master's of public health, but it's from a nursing lens, and it's from an at University of Michigan, they purposely make everything from an intersectional lens, which I appreciate. Most of my professors were Black women and women of color, and that makes a huge difference. And so working with those women then spurred me to start deconstructing, decolonizing, and becoming an active anti-racist. And it's also positioned me to, now that I've graduated, all of my loans get discharged because I qualify for total permanent disability because of my quadriplegia. But in order to get it's over $100,000 of loans that I have. In order to get those loans discharged, I cannot make over poverty for the next 3 years, which basically means I can either get a job or stay on Social Security disability income and keep my Medicare. So I have a position and a title at a local social service organization where I can put that on my resume, and they don't have to pay me because I can't get paid right now.
Goodness gracious.
I'm calling it my fellowship. I'm like, this is my fellowship, because all of my experience is in the clinical setting. And so even though I've done some of my clinicals or, my practicums out in social service agencies while I was in school, I need to learn how to write grants. I need to learn how to become an activist for my specific community.
Your community.
Yeah. And so I need to learn all of these things while also providing services. And so so that is starting this fall, and I'm working with them right now. I don't know if you guys follow Display Don't Play on TikTok. But she had a daughter who was poisoned by water beads. And so she has done she's going to Congress about getting changes in exposure type issues.
I don't think so. And I will correct that, because I will follow anybody you tell me to follow. But number one, congratulations on graduating. Congratulations on this new job. But I know this is not the subject that we were going to be talking about today, but it's just sort of like a highlight pinpoint to the internets out there. Like, these are human beings that deserve to work and earn a living to take care of themselves. And the fact that our systems are set up in place that you can't get help, or you can't even get a job to take care of yourself. You have to be reliant. And then you have a bunch of people who would say that you are mooching off the system. You're mooching off the system for that $1,000. But
or you
when they
can't
won't
get
even-
married if you're not married because
And
you'll lose your benefit.
your
and
ben-
things.
your
Yeah,
benefits.
and luckily I'm on Social Security disability
Mhm.
income, which is based off of the income tax that I paid out prior to my injury. So luckily I worked before
Yeah.
I was injured.
Mm.
I have many friends that were injured before they had a job or before they were 18. So those people are on Social Security income, SSI, which is capped out at $900. And they
A month, everybody. A month.
$900
I want
a month.
everybody to stop. They expect somebody to live in America on $900 motherfucking dollars when people with disabilities have more expenses, not less. They expect the United States government and the people who vote and the people who say that disabled people mooch off the system. And they say, oh, just want a free ride. Nobody is getting a free ride off of $900 a month.
Right.
Yep.
And it's the money you've paid into the system if you live in a state that collects disability, because there's also places like Texas that don't collect disability while you work.
And then if anybody were to say to you then, well, you know, it was the money that you earn from the system. So what you're telling me is somebody who has the inability to work and not accrue that doesn't deserve it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
what you're
so
saying?
the big thing is that the people who are on SSI also cannot have more than $2,000 worth of assets.
Anthony, that's a car.
So they
can't
can't
have a car.
own a car. They can't own a house.
Home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They have to apply for subsidized housing, and the wait lists on that are 3 to 5 years. So I have housed people because I want everybody to know when they hear me talking, I come from extreme privilege. My father is a hospital CEO. My mother is a nurse anesthetist. They both make 6 figures. My mom comes from poverty, but my dad comes from some wealth. A white European, beauty standard kind of, person. And so I get a lot of things covered, and I get a lot, my housing, my food. I don't have to worry about these things,
Mhm.
but I talk to people and with disabilities in my community so that I can understand the people that have the most marginalization, what they're going through. So, I'll often talk about like people who are on SSI, and I don't have that lived experience, but I know that they're having a hard time because I've had them in my home. I've helped them work through this. And the big thing is that, like, let's say they want to get a job. Well, then they lose their state and federal health insurance.
Yeah.
And unless you're working full time at a job, you're not getting health insurance from that job. And the health insurance that you get from a company does not cover as much as Medicaid and Medicare would cover, because Medicaid and Medicare are kind of the standard.
Mhm.
And these private insurance companies can deny things more than, Medicare and Medicaid already deny a ton of stuff, and you have to appeal a bunch of things with them. I mean, my wheelchair is considered a luxury item. So
Your legs to get around. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, let's use this as a moment to transition over into kind of discussion about I mean, even though it's going to be like a complete non sequitur segue type of thing, to talk about sort of universal design and accessibility as it relates to travel, because for folks that are learning a little bit from your intro about the difficulties that disabled and people with disabilities experience, one of the things that is going to be really helpful to this audience will be learning how you maneuver. And I imagine it's going to be different for every single person. And even that's part of the journey that Shae and I are discussing too, as her situation starts to shift over time as well. Hearing from anybody will at least start the process to give us and our audiences places to start our research, so that we can prepare a little bit. So can you get a little bit into why don't we just briefly define universal design and then compare it to the sort of just accidental accessibility that exists, and then we can kind of get into how that connects to travel.
Mm-hmm. My thought of universal design is that it is accessible without having to think or do an extra step. So, like grocery store doors that just automatically open. Everybody expects it. It's just, you know, I can roll to a grocery store, the motion sensors pick it up. I don't have to press a button. I go in. To me, that is universal design. The aisles are wide enough. Granted, some stuff is up too high. So like if they had things all on lower shelves, you know, that would be more of a universal design type of thing. But there are, you know, like hospitals, airports, they have flat, smooth surfaces that you're rolling over. There's ramps everywhere. There's elevators. There's signs to the elevators. Like I think of universal design as accessibility that you don't have to think of or look for.
Okay.
Okay.
And then there's like ADA type accessibility, which is push buttons on doors, having one accessible stall in a restroom. Universal design would be having every single stall in the restroom being an accessible stall. Mm-hmm. So like just everybody gets to use it, right? And that's like normalizing having accessibility, right? Like if a parking lot had it so that there was just spaces between each parking space. So every space is an accessible parking space. Because honestly, like I can, with my wheelchair, like I can roll from the end of the parking lot into the front, right? I don't need the spot right next to the front of the place. There are people who have difficulties getting to, they have more difficulty movement. So like having that front spot is great for them, but I try not to take those spots because I don't necessarily need it. I don't need the closest spots. And so just like thinking about like, oh, if they made every spot like this and everyone just expected it to be that way, right? Curb cuts are a great example of universal design, because when you think of universal design, it helps everyone, right? It doesn't just help people with disabilities. It helps moms with strollers. It helps people who
with walkers
have trouble stepping up over a curb. It helps people who have carts or rolling backpacks. So like universal design, it actually benefits every single person, not just the people with disabilities.
Right.
Okay.
And then I'll go ahead and put this up.
So I have this, but then I went and pulled up. So Buffalo University, or the University of Buffalo, states that a universal design means planning to build physical learning and work environments so that they are usable by a wide range of people, regardless of age, size, or disability status. While universal design promotes access for individuals with disability, it also benefits others, just tying into what Lindsey just said here. And I don't know if I need to let's see if I can.
I actually love that. What I think about as universal design is actually what they just said. Like, yeah, it's for accessibility for a wide range of people that actually helps everyone. Everyone benefits from universal design.
Right. Like here's your shopping. Number one is the going to the grocery store, right? Doors that automatically open. And or Sharmane, as we've discovered before we were filming, like I assumed that going to the bathroom where you put your hands underneath and it turns the water on was a universal design. However, you mentioned
Okay, so I can talk a little bit about this. So the automatic detectors for your sink to turn on, or your automatic soap dispenser, or your automatic towel dispenser, the original teams that were creating those were predominantly white people.
Yeah.
And from the story that I understood, there was one Asian woman, East Asian woman, and so she's naturally going to have paler undersides of hands as well. So they was working, but it was working less on her than anybody else. And the more they got into it, the more somebody eventually realized, oh, wait, I'm darker than everybody else. And so it's not picking me up because it's coded to one thing. This was happening at the same time that the iPhones were trying to do face recognition, and it wasn't acknowledging darker skinned people. Even light melanated people weren't getting picked up originally. So this is something that has been fixed over time, but it's not consistent across the board. And if somebody did their installation ahead of when they started to make those updates, they might still struggle. So whenever I'm in a space where I notice that a darker skinned person is struggling to get it, I was like, look for the whitest part of your under part of your hand if you do, or in the case of them not having a light part, I will put my hand underneath the thing, because I do have a lighter bottom of my hand. But if I flip my hand to the top, it won't catch me. So it's that much of a difference, that like I'm not that dark skinned of a mixed person, and I experienced that. So they trying to fix it type of thing. This technology has existed for I think about 15 years or so.
Yeah,
and it's still a problem.
Right. And that is something that I used as an example of, oh, this is universal design. And then Sharmane was able to correct me on, actually, not always. And, as a white disabled person, that's a blind spot for me. And that's something that I'm always looking for, what are my blind spots? And I'm very thankful that that you were able to point that out to me, because then I can adjust my examples for the future. And actually, when I use that example, at least put the asterisk there.
Yeah. I'll also say that this traveling experience that I've had since we decided to do the show together. So I think I've always kind of had a little bit of an eye for at least ADA compliance, because I used to be a facilities manager. And so that was actually a aspect of my job. And so I'm very aware of when a hallway is not at least 4 feet wide or something like that, because that was something that I had to do in the job that I did. But even with that level of paying attention, the blind spots are 100% there. But since I started to travel specifically for doing this show, and knowing what Shae was starting to experience, and knowing that I was going to have to keep my eye out for it, since I was the one traveling more at the moment, I'm catching things that I've never caught before, but I don't know what I'm missing. And that, that's why it's important to also try to engage in conversation with people that are in those different groups, because then we can catch some of these things and hopefully incite change in some way, shape, or form if we're able to.
Because I'm more able-bodied than you. You're more able-bodied than me, Sharmane. And that means we have a certain level of privilege. That means that when we speak up and we get whatever, hopefully other people will listen and some change can happen. Because I know we're going into travel, and in particular, and you just kind of touched on the ADA, a lot of people that I have spoken to about traveling abroad and why they were trying to talk me out of not going abroad is the assumption that because America has the ADA, somehow this is we have it all figured out.
We got to figure it out.
People, and
solved all the problems.
The more disabled person down below is like, no, it's not. Can you touch on that just a little bit for me, Lindsey?
Yeah. So the ADA, first of all, it's not. It is a law, but it's a guideline, right? So there's a lot of exceptions to the ADA that are given to businesses, and you'll often see Texas and Florida governors and Congress people putting out bills trying to gut the ADA, because they think the ADA preys upon businesses.
Yeah.
And
they'll also even allow the age of the building to be the reason why they won't adjust for ADA as well.
Yeah, they call it grandfathering. And
which is also racist terminology.
Yeah, and I always tell them, I go, that's not a thing. That doesn't exist in the ADA. No. And so anytime a place makes any renovations, they need to then do accessible. Like if they're going to put money into renovations,
right,
their money needs to go into accessibility first. So if I see a place that has had renovations and they haven't done accessibility stuff, that's when I'll bring it up to them. But yeah, as far as the ADA goes, enforcing it is the responsibility of the people with disabilities. Yes. There's no oversight committee.
The people with less, the people with less power, the people with less money to get themselves a lawyer, to get themselves to sue somebody.
Less access,
The less access.
Don't be invited into rooms.
Yeah.
There's no branch of the government that has oversight that is like enforcing the ADA rules. The enforcement of the ADA rules is through lawsuits.
And this is something that we've been talking about since I've been traveling too, is that part of what we're hoping to start doing with the show too is sort of reviewing areas or reviewing places so we can say like, this would be a safe space for, people to travel under these conditions or whatever. I'm usually walking through spaces from the perspective of a Black, Asian, mixed, ambiguous presenting femme. And so my lens is definitely geared towards the way society impacts Black women, femmes, Asian women, femmes, etc. But now that I'm trying to keep my eye open for all these other things, there's things that even though I'm the one who's traveling the more, and I'm traveling more because I have fewer, what's the word I'm looking for, Shae?
Job?
When you can go out, immune compromised. I'm not immune compromised generally. I do have some health issues, but most of them I'm able to not necessarily be at risk if I go outside, essentially.
Yeah.
So that being the case, I do go outside. I'm participating in a lot of events right now. And so I want to find a place to review and say, like, is this going to be accessible? Could I have brought Shae here under the current situation that Shae's in? Could I bring my other friend who's got a different mobility disability? Can I bring them in this space? But I'm afraid to take up to rent those rooms or to get that Airbnb that is mentioning accessibility, because I don't want to take it away, knowing that there's so few options, that universal design is not prevalent, me just doing it so that I can review it for my cute little show, I might have actually prevented someone from being able to access that space. Like many hotels maybe have less.
Back on that.
Okay.
I'm going to push back on that.
Okay.
Good. Do it.
Because having, so me as someone with a disability, if an Airbnb says it's accessible, I don't know that it's actually accessible. That's unless true. Somebody has gone that understands what accessibility is and reviews it and says, yes, the bed is this many inches off of, from the floor. A shower has a bench and is a roll-in shower. There's bars on the around the toilet. There is enough room to get around the room. The furniture is movable in order to create more space. People will say a place is accessible and then you get there and there's a step to get inside.
Yeah, right? And I actually have noticed that.
Exactly. And so having somebody who is able-bodied but is looking at things from a disability lens, like my husband, he goes and scouts out places, like we call it scouting. I'm like, go scout it out.
Okay.
And he goes and scouts it out and figures out, okay, this hotel with a hot spring, I can take my wife here and we can have a good time. But he'll go and have dinner there with a friend first and check out the rooms and everything to make sure that it's going to be an enjoyable experience and not frustrating for me. Because we do a lot of stuff where Mike does pick me up and throw me over his shoulder and things like that, but that's not necessarily comfortable. And sometimes,
or something that somebody else can do.
Right.
What if they're traveling alone?
Exactly. Like I have a husband who was a Division I wrestler at Ohio State. So like his physical capabilities are far beyond the average caregiver. Right. And so we have to look at things like, you know, my husband and I can go out camping and doing these things, but like, if we want to get away, we want to get away. Right. We don't want to have to. So there's like 2 places nearby that we do our little staycations at. At Timberline Lodge is completely accessible. It has hot tubs, really cute rooms and everything. A restaurant right there inside that has, I mean, the best food around, and it's on the top of Mount Hood. It's the opening scene, or not the opening scene, but like the outside shot of the hotel in The Shining.
Okay.
That's Timberline.
I don't.
I mean, for that alone, I would be down, because I do kind of.
And they do around Halloween.
Sharmane, that's white people shit.
Yeah.
No, listen.
Around Halloween, they do a whole like themed dinner thing around The Shining. It's really cool.
That's fun. So little side note in terms of white people shit, because there is something that I have had to do once, and I didn't realize I was probably calling upon my British ancestry to get through this. I made a short film in Massachusetts. I was living at the time in Rhode Island, whatever. And in Fall River, there is the Borden house. I shot my film in the Borden house. Well, they give you a little tour before. It's an Airbnb now, so it is what it is. They do a little tour before you get in there and stuff, and so they show you where the stepmother was killed. They show you where the father was killed and everything like that. And most of my cast was uncomfortable being in that room, and that was the best room to shoot in. That looked like what I wanted it to look like. So I physically laid down in the location that the woman had been killed. And I was just like, see, nothing's happening. Everything's fine, blah, 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 blah. But they were expecting me to basically die on spot. And I was like, you know how many people, it's been like 100 years. You know how many people have been in this space? So I just did it. And then, so that was my venture into white people shit. But I was trying to explain that like people stay the night in this room for 100 years and nobody has died from being in this room. But so I like to look at places that have like the horror film thing, you know. I'll go. Okay, I also am very murder fan. I am a murder fan, I guess.
Well, true
crime. Yeah.
And like I
specifically murders is my deal.
I do venture into true crime quite a bit, and honestly, I think part of it is us as femmes, somewhat of a trauma response to the fact that we are surrounded by our only natural predator. And so I mean, in my way, I'm trying to understand them.
Same. It's a psychology thing.
And to understand what to look out for. Because I'm alert at all times. I am very vulnerable.
Right.
Especially when I'm out on my own, getting in and out of my car. I don't know, Shae, if you can pull up one of the TikToks that I sent you, but it shows me loading my chair in and out of the truck. And it shows, so this is a great example of like individualized accessibility, where I wanted a pickup truck, and I have a specific chair that is light, but it will fold instead of it being like a fixed frame, because I need it to fit into the back seat of my truck. And I have a lift that's kind of like a crane or like a winch lift, where you click it onto the wheels and then you push the button and it lifts it up and then it puts it into the car. And then my right side, I'd say I have about 65% normal strength, or, I don't want to say normal strength, but 65% of my pre-injury strength on my right side. and I have really good control of like my right hand and my right leg. And so getting into the driver's side, I lead with the right side first. I'm able to step up, and I use like, if I can't use the big step, I have a little step that I can pull out, and then it has a rope that I bring it up back into the car with me. But I can get myself into my truck, and then I drive my truck normally because my right foot works.
Okay.
So I don't have hand controls on my truck. I do have a steer, a soft steer assist though, which is incredibly expensive. But yeah, this is it. So you can see I can stand up, but I'm leaning on the truck the entire time. Like my knees are leaning up against the truck to kind of hold me up.
Oh, and okay.
And then I get the seat and the back out, and then I flip myself into it.
So with this being your situation where you can stand and kind of rest, are you ever accused, because people are trash, of you not being actually disabled?
No, because when they see me standing, my legs are shaking underneath me, and they're little toothpick legs. And this is a great video of showing this is likely a paraplegic.
Yeah, so there's no being able to stand. And unfortunately, in many areas in America, there are absolutely zero, because they don't have to be up to code because they were built before a certain time, no accessible parking. So this is what they have to do to get out to go home every day. I don't know if sound works with it, but
yeah. So that's a fixed frame. So you can see like the frame doesn't give at all. It's completely fixed, which is really normal for paraplegics, and a lot of quadriplegics have like lower quadriplegics have the fixed frame as well. And this is a pretty standard way of getting in and out of the car for someone with paraplegia. This is like you take the wheels off, and those wheels are super light. My wheels have a motor in each wheel because of my partial paralysis. It's basically a bridge between a completely manual chair and a power chair. So like when I touch my wheels, they have a little, like I just barely touched it there, and you can see like it just it just moves.
And this person is complaining that they barely have space to put their chair together. And then in a lot of places, Sharmane, that will say that there's wheelchair accessibility from the car to the place, they go, it's gravel.
Yeah. Yeah. And if like for me, I have the power assist wheels. So that stuff.
But this person would have to do it manually.
Yeah, but with the manual, and that's what kills our shoulders. And people with paralysis, that's actually why I ended up with the power assist wheels, because I got a shoulder injury, which is weird to say luckily, but I had a shoulder injury in my accident because my brachial plexus was injured by the seatbelt. So because of that shoulder injury, I qualified for these power assist wheels. These power assist wheels is the first time that the team that I was working with has ever gotten these covered by insurance.
Oh, wow.
So there was one video that Lindsey and I think I shared it with you, Sharmane, that made us really, really very upset. And we would like to show it. Here it is. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Oh yes, the airplane.
Yeah. So this one is the ADA applies up until you get into the plane. Once you're in the plane, you are that it is not the ADA. You have to look under the Airline Access Carrier Act. And that what happened to her here is a violation of the Airline Access Carrier Act. And in order to file a complaint, you have to ask for someone in the airport that, and they have them, they have to, it's law to have someone who is an, like a liaison for the Airline Access Carrier Act. I have to think about it every time I say it, because it's the AACA. And so what happened to her here is they said that they did not have a wheelchair available. And I think that that's a lie. Looking at the size of that plane. Now, granted, the smaller planes where it's just 2 seats, on either side, the real small ones, the little pond hoppers, where you're on them for like an hour, 2 hours at the most. Those ones don't necessarily have the wheelchair just because of the size of the thing. So, those ones I make sure to empty my bladder prior. The other thing is they sat her incredibly far away from the bathrooms, which they could have easily talked to somebody who was sitting closer to the bathrooms and said, hey, we have someone with a disability. Would you mind trading seats with them? And guess what? People are pretty cool and they will trade. But, that's something that I've had to advocate for, where I'm like, can I just ask someone if they'll trade seats with me?
Right.
And they're like, oh yeah, you can ask.
Well,
okay.
Also, there's other things I think at play here. Like if
Right.
she was even slightly larger than she is, that would have been really tough for her to go down the aisle. Although, the fact that the cart is still there, like you can see the cart is all the way in the background too. So they didn't even stop to let that happen.
None of the people on the plane are advocating for her to the flight attendants to say, hey,
that's my
move
question.
The thing, or hey, give her my seat.
Right.
Do you and of course getting angry and calling somebody names, Shae, I'm talking to you, may not be the best course of action, because if I had seen that live, I think I would have lost my shit. How she's crawling on the ground and this is acceptable to you? She's no, not crawling. She's dragging herself. Yeah. That's acceptable to you.
Yeah.
The cleanliness of that floor. Like there's so many things
she's risking friction tears.
Yeah.
To her skin, and people with paralysis already.
That was her husband. Yep. That was her husband that she was holding on to lift her onto the toilet. Had she had that wheelchair or had been closer to it, they wouldn't have to been on the ground and lift her up like that.
Exactly.
And also these planes I know are older. Some of them are 30 years old and stuff like that. But why don't we have larger loos in the bathroom?
Yeah.
Why don't we have them?
Just sacrifice a couple of chairs
and the airlines don't want to do that because they make so much money per chair.
Yep.
And there has to be an incentive, and that's why, again, we're going into the weeds there. But like people of the internet, this is why it's really important. Like, because you guys, anybody who's going to defend the airline, going that they need to make money, this and that, they got hurt for COVID, yada yada yada. These people make more than enough money.
They make a ton of money.
They make a ton of damn money.
Yep.
And they get tax write-offs and everything else. They got tax write-offs and PPP loans to take care of their people during COVID, and they laid people off. So stop defending people who have way more money than you will ever fucking have, and start advocating that. Because do you all like think about it from your own personal perspective? I would like a little bit more room on a plane.
Yeah.
I
mean,
and
I also wonder.
Everybody is one accident away from being in that position.
Right.
So if you, as an able-bodied person, if people of the internet, if we start demanding that they create accessible, restrooms and have, seats that maybe move out so that a wheelchair can come in. Yes, you're advocating for people like me, but you're advocating for yourself in the future.
Yes.
Because, we all age, we all end up with disabilities, with aging. That just comes naturally. you know, if you live to a certain age, disability is a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
So advocating now means advocating for your future self.
But this frustrates me. And I went off about this on which is an episode that hasn't aired yet at the time we're talking, but will by the time people hear this. This is the thing that frustrates me about empathy. You don't need to be able to picture yourself in that situation. You don't even need to think that it's going to happen to you one day. You could just be like, a shitty thing is happening to a living being. And I don't want shitty things to happen to living beings. But for some reason, we need empathy to mean I am going to be in that situation, or I can picture myself in such situation. Therefore, I need to make change for myself. And I want to say, like, I would have probably done more damage, I think, in the situation if I witnessed that woman experience that, because I would have flipped out, caused a scene that would have been more of a reflection on her than me, probably, unfortunately.
And I'm going to piss off the people of the internet who might be watching this, but if I just look at this video right here and there, if we had one person of color on that flight, something would have been said.
Which is why I would have made a scene, because I would have seen it and I'd be like, you're going to let this person drag their body, risk injury, risk infection, risk all kinds of shit.
You say that you would have made it worse. Honestly, I've had people stand up for me before out in public.
Mm-hmm.
And like one time I had this, I'm going to get a little emotional because I have some religious trauma, but one time I had this pilot who was also a pastor, and he like stopped me and was like, I want to pray for you. And I'm like, cool, do it on your own time. Right. And like my husband's there, and Mike knows not to really jump in on things. He knows I can handle it and whatever. And the guy was like, no, let me pray for you. And I'm like, dude, like the only thing that's going to happen here is you're going to feel better and I'm going to feel worse. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at Detroit Airport, and my Metro Detroit, my hometown, and a Black woman who was one of the Alaska Airlines employees that I flew back and forth from Michigan every single month for school, right? So Alaska Airlines only had one flight a day that flew out of Detroit to Portland. And so I knew these employees very well. She was walking past when that happened, and she was like, absolutely not. You are in your uniform. This is unprofessional. You need to get out of her face. And I was just like,
thank you.
Like, thank you. You know, and it's like Mike could have stepped in, but that he doesn't want me to feel like he thinks that I need him to step in, you know, but just like having another woman come in and just be like, I got you, girl.
Yeah.
You know, like a sisterhood type thing.
Yeah.
It feels so good.
That is what is frustrating about a lot of these videos you see on the internet, is you don't see people just speak up. I mean, I feel like the lack of people speaking up was probably why I would end up raising a bigger scene. Maybe.
Yeah, but we're the ones that end up having to speak up after we've gone through that, like
that extra trauma.
Super fucking embarrassing, traumatic. Like, you know, I've fallen before and had to crawl myself across the floor in my house alone, and like the abrasions and stuff and the fear, it's immense. Like anytime I end up on the floor, it's scary. It hurts. And I can't get myself into a comfortable position. I can feel everything down to like my feet. And so like, and I'm super bony because I've lost all this weight. So like, I can't get myself comfortable, and like just waiting for someone to come I can't get myself up off the ground without help. So like watching her, like I wouldn't even be able to do what she did. I would have had to sit there and wet myself, or, you know, if I had my husband, have him carry me, or my dad carry me. But if I was with my mom, we would have been Well, if I
Yeah.
was with my mom, she would have put a blanket over me and we would have cast me into a cup because my mom's a nurse and she would have just been like,
Yeah, but
fuck,
Let's
like,
be very
fuck
practical
this. They're
about
going to
this.
have to
Yeah.
then
This
throw
is-
your piss away, you know?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
here-
I've been on a plane with a person who died on the plane before, and they just
I
leave
have
them
too.
where they're sitting. So if throwing a blanket around someone who can't get maneuvered to the bathroom so that they can pee in a cup, that seems reasonable to me.
And I want to take a moment, like, I know you guys don't see it on the screen, but this last video that I showed, she had to turn off her comments.
Oh yeah, I see.
People were being vile.
They were putting it on her.
Yeah, I did see one comment that was about like, why didn't you just wear a diaper or something like that, as if that was going to be.
Yeah, somebody stitched it and said that.
And it's like,
It's so dehumanizing, and like they infantilize us
right.
in a way that is just like, and like, fuck you, you wear a diaper.
That's
you
what I'm
know?
saying. Like,
Yeah.
Like seriously,
And-
like what the hell? And then what? And then like I'm in a diaper and I wet the diaper and now I have to sit in this.
Sit in it for 3 hours?
right.
4 hours?
We
6
know
hours?
that babies overshoot their diapers and things like that. What if that was a situation you were in?
Yeah.
Plus, I don't
Exactly.
know, as
And-
an adult person who's never had to use anything like this, I don't know that it's not going to sit.
Oh no,
like I'm going to feel it.
You have to change it after you've used it, because
Oh, really?
otherwise you're going to end up with, you
With
know,
this-
like
like the
a
infections
diaper
and
rash,
stuff.
or
Sore.
it's like a chemical burn and your
Yeah.
skin literally
sitting in-
sloughs off.
You're sitting in ammonia.
So they're not even as good a quality as like infant diapers or anything like that.
Yeah, no. And when I was in the hospital, the first 14 hours, they couldn't turn me or do anything. They couldn't move me at all
They couldn't
because
move you.
my fracture was so unstable. But we had to wait overnight because when it happened, the surgeon who was on call had just gotten done with a 14-hour surgery. And he came in and talked to me. And obviously I have an anesthesia background. And he's like, listen, the on-call team is tired. You have a very complicated, unstable fracture. I want to rest and come in fresh in the morning.
You
because
deserve the
this is
best
gonna
me.
be a full day surgery. And they had to do, they had to go in the front and the back. And so during that time, they had me on antibiotics and things. And I ended up having diarrhea. And so I ended up with skin breakdown on the back of my legs from my knee up to my lower back. And it took a month and a half for that to heal. My mother bathed me every single night. She did the diaper cream. She did all the changes and everything to make sure that it healed. And that's the thing, is like these wounds on people with paralysis, wounds can take us out. Literally can kill us.
And most able-bodied people, I need you to listen here. It doesn't take long for something very bad to happen to you if you have a cut or an injury where bacteria gets in. It's less than 24 hours. I believe it's like 12 to 14 hours. I'm not the nurse. You're the nurse. But it's very quick. So we need to be thinking about things like this. And when it comes to the travel, yes, maybe throwing a tantrum, but definitely I would have raised hell to the flight crew. I would have raised hell at corporate. I would have called every damn media center there was before we'd even landed. I would have been tweeting this shit out, saying that I just watched a full grown woman have to drag her ass literally through a plane because of this airline refused to help with accessibility. And
imagine if, like, not every person on that flight, but half of the people on that flight. Imagine if 50% of the people on that flight tweeted about it, and were outraged about it. There would be change being made.
There would be change.
There would be change.
But the only thing that exists is her video. And it's turned into a judgment against her.
That's wild too, because not even another person in the plane has a view of it or anything like that. And you see multiple views of videos all the time.
Right.
this woman was alone in this.
Yes.
Besides, well, her and her husband, I guess,
Right,
were alone in
exactly.
this.
They were completely, and that's the other thing is, you know, I mean, up until what, 1974, there were the ugly laws.
Yeah.
Where straight up people with disabilities were not allowed out in public.
Yeah.
So like these biases still exist to where people like they'll see someone with a disability struggling, but it doesn't register to them that that is a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there are some people that I've talked to, and even myself, I've felt this way, where they go, well, I don't feel comfortable going up. I don't want to make them awkward. I don't want this. First of all, don't touch the person. Don't touch the chair.
Don't touch people. Don't touch people. Anybody.
Yeah.
Go up to them
touched.
how you would someone. Hi, my name is Shae.
Yeah.
Do you need any assistance? You don't? Well, you look fabulous today. Have a great day. Oh, I can help you. Awesome. What would you need? Like, what can I do for you? It's that simple. It's that damn simple.
Yeah.
And you're right, Sharmane. We have a serious problem with people that it doesn't affect me. I don't care. It's one of the things that pisses me off, like to no end right now. It's been,
and I think about, like white people, right? Like we could never, like, earlier when I was talking about like, people who are able-bodied should advocate for people with disabilities because they could be us. But like white people, we would never experience what the racism and stuff that Black, Indigenous, and brown and other people of color experience in
unless
the
an
United
alien
States,
race came
right?
to the planet.
Right.
But we can still call it out when we see it and advocate for change.
Yeah.
Even though we'll never be in that position.
And even if you don't know how to make the change happen, just simply pointing at that and saying that's fucked up and that shouldn't be that way is a great damn start.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Arena taught me like when people, are doing are bordering on racism, she's like, if you want to make a, TikTok, like to respond to a comment or a video, just do it like I see you. Like, like a predator almost. Like, hey, wolf, I'm a wolf too. I see you. I see what you're doing.
Oh, so not I
doing.
see you to the victim, but I see you to the perpetrator.
Exactly. And that's what I do on my page all the time is I use TikTok sounds to just be like, I see you.
Yep.
And TikTok sounds don't get me community guidelines violations.
Well, and also I do notice that when certain people would come at me at a certain angle, because I appear to be able-bodied, there are certain things they'd say to me that they would never say to you or type it out or whatever, because they know immediately what would happen in the space of social media. It's like being racist is, I'm not being racist. I don't see color, but calling you a cripple or crip or something like that, or, and all of a sudden everybody be like, oh, you but that's has the extent of this, because had this woman, because there are people who are Black, brown, Indigenous who are also disabled, and they affect this, and they get this at a higher rate. So when it comes to traveling, Lindsey, when it comes to not just being an advocate on, and I apologize because I realize I am about to ask you the question about, please educate us on how to do this.
No, that's what I'm here for. But I'm an educator, so this is part. This is part of what I do, right?
So this is where I've been getting stuck. It's hard enough to find information on how to do this correctly in the United States. Okay. It's a whole nother realm when I want to go international, because they don't have an ADA. That doesn't mean they don't have laws in place. They just don't have something that I know how to ask about.
Right. But
when it comes to, if we just, because your experience is traveling within the United States and to the colonized world of Hawaii, is what can we do? What's a better, like, not just advocating, but what is the steps so that you would hope for us to take?
So, honestly, if you want to know more about international travel and accessibility, I would look for people, because there are many people that have disability that do international travel and have their whole Instagram or online blogs or TikToks dedicated to, this is how I got around Italy. This is how I got around France. This is
how I got on Scotland. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where I go, is I type in like wheelchair travel, right? And like hashtag wheelchair travel or hashtag international wheelchair, and like athletes are really great to look for. People like so there's
like Paralympians and things.
Yeah, but there are tons of things outside of the Paralympics that wheelchair basketball, murder ball.
Actually, I know some of those.
Yeah, and so those guys, they have online presence, and they travel the world, and so and a lot of them are quadriplegics, and so they're dudes, right? But like still they're.
Please don't tell me there's not even like a femme.
No, there's
woman.
I mean,
basketball.
I straight up traveled to Alaska with a woman who is internationally known for shot put, that is a C7 quadriplegic and travels the world and is one of my friends on Facebook. I'll try to find her and send her your guys' way. That way you guys can kind of look at her stuff. But yeah, we exist, athletic, athletic femmes with disabilities exist, and they do blogs. My friend Anna is a L3 paraplegic, and she summited Mount Hood with her crutches.
And then do that now.
I know. I'm not. No, there's no whatever.
I mean, like these are the disabled people I know out here that are doing amazing.
So yes, the beginning part of everything internet is that you really want to make sure that everything you're following and learning from should be intentional. It's intentional, and you're looking at it from an intersectional perspective. I've said this before. I'm going to keep repeating it to you. So if you're like, yes, is it literally sometimes where I literally go, a person with a wheelchair disability? Check. Yep. Do I have also somebody who can't speak? Has moments where they can't have word, they can't use
nonverbal,
nonverbal, like stuff like, check all this other stuff. But when it comes to what it sounds like to me is I'm looking for individuals how they have made their way through stuff. It sounds like to me that me trying to find resources to find
you don't want to look to the systems for the information, because they're all from an able-bodied lens.
So it's really not much different than the way I have to maneuver as a brown femme, where I'm constantly seeking out what is the brown femme thing to do in this situation, and I'm looking for individual brown femmes.
Would it be helpful
adding another intersection that I'm only partially mindful of and working
on
more?
It's like when you want to learn about something, you seek out the people that are actually experiencing that on a day-to-day, because they don't need a degree in this to be
you're just living your life.
So because one of the things that was frustrating me when I was starting my journey of I know queer people and trans people and everything in between live everywhere in the world. How do they own businesses and Airbnbs, and they want to go and travel and stay places. How do I find it? I've only found one website, and it hasn't been updated since the early 2000s, and it had no representation of trans.
It's all about searching hashtags.
Right. So that seems to be it. And that's okay.
It's weird, but I guess it makes sense though. I would much rather find someone who's living that life, or actually in those places doing things, boots on the ground, whatever you want to say, and get a chance to know it from that perspective versus
when you guys are searching
Government.
online, are you guys familiar with Boolean operators?
No.
I've heard this term before, but I don't know how to
that is
maneuver them.
something you should look into as far as wanting to search for intersectional things.
Okay.
Because it's about putting words like "and" in brackets, putting things in quotes. And so you can say like wheelchair in quotes and in brackets.
Okay.
Femme.
Yeah, it's like
quotes,
how you search.
and
Yeah.
How
in
can
brackets. And then you can put not in brackets. So not male, right? Or not men. Like, and it will eliminate all of that from the search results so that you're getting to exactly like, so that you're not having to go
Comb
through 15 pages to find what you want. It's like your search results are your search results. Now, granted, I was taught that at the doctorate level, right? In doing literature searches, but that is something that's accessible to everyone, and you can use it. You can use Boolean operators on Google, and I use them all the time.
Okay.
That is how I do a lot of my advocacy for people, especially when they're trying to get signed up for like state insurance, like Medicaid. When you type Medicaid for a certain state into Google and just put Medicaid, Georgia into Google, the actual government website is probably 2 or 3 pages back because so many paid insurance companies come up first and want you to buy insurance from them. So I know the Boolean operators to either share with people or to just do to then send the person the link.
Okay.
So we could do this all day, and I know.
Yeah, we're transitioning out now.
But like one of the goals of Queer and Far is Sharmane and I were really talking about it being a place of resource where people can go to see from marginalized, like, oh, I am this, are we like barking up the wrong tree? Are we going about it the wrong way, you think? Or like, is this something that is...
We're in our research phase. We're learning how to be that resource.
I think, honestly, so, from a systems, populations, and leadership perspective.
Yes, please.
We are taught to, it used to be that leadership was taught from a very hierarchical standpoint, from a very white patriarchal standpoint. But the way that I was taught leadership was intersectionally. And the number one thing with leadership is you go to the people who are doing the work or experiencing the thing. So like if I was managing a hospital and I wanted to make some changes to supplies that nurses would use, I'm going to go to those nurses and ask them, what changes to supplies would you need? Yeah. What would make, what placement of this, like, where should we put the hand sanitizing units so that they are accessible to you at all times, right? So it's easy for you to get to these things. You go to the people who are experiencing these things. And yeah, you're going to talk to people and get their individual experiences, but those individual experiences start to give you that intersectional lens to start looking at things. A great book that I'm going to recommend that is incredibly intersectional that also deals with disability is called Care Work by Leah Lakshmi. And she is a brown queer femme with a disability that has done community organizing and has created ways where people with disabilities support each other in a community in order to become independent, away from the system. And it's an amazing resource. They have it by audiobook, Kindle, and paperback. So
Yes, I have it. I have it. It's in my library. I'm behind. It's in my library. Well, then from what I just heard you say is that Sharmane and I are we're heading in the positive direction of listening to communities and going out there and getting that information so we can perhaps make something more universal. Yes, that's our goal.
And I think the process of researching, this is something that I do in my Black Asian solidarity work, is that you get your hands dirty and then you work through cleaning it up, right? Like you got to get in there first to find out what the problems are.
Exactly.
And even like the way I communicate with activists is different now than I originally did, because I needed to learn what those activism spaces were like when there's anti-Blackness in Asian communities, anti-Asianness in Black communities. I think this is an extension of that, because what we learn in intersectionality is literally every community is experiencing the same problems, but there's different words, there's different keywords, there's different definitions of what exactly people are experiencing. So
a lot of times when I'm looking at things, especially in like the advocacy work that I do, and you know, the community work and any changes that I'm trying to make, I try to always think about like, okay, if this was a Black trans woman with a disability, would this serve her? Would that, you know, would this cover because if this is going to serve a Black trans woman with a disability, granted, there are still things that I could be missing, right? But I always try to at least think about like, are we serving the most marginalized person in our society? A Black trans woman with a disability, that is the most marginalized person in the world, right? And so if we're looking at things and trying to at least like, okay, you know, thinking about ableism, thinking about racism, thinking about just basically like white supremacy culture, and like, okay, is this pushing back on that? Is this fixing, you know, is this going at the root of what's going on? So, you know, accessibility is, yes, it's ramps and it's doors and it's things like that, but it's also attitudes of people around you and how people treat you, right? So like my capstone project for my doctorate was not in changing environments to suit people with disabilities in the healthcare system. It was in changing attitudes of healthcare providers. That does my more education.
Work. Yeah.
And my education was all about intersectionality, and we had pre-test, post-test, and a 3-month follow-up. And the attitudes were significantly changed with a 90-minute intervention of getting them to think intersectionally.
That's amazing.
90-minute.
Yeah.
All right. I'm excited.
Well, thank you for having this conversation with us, and it also being kind of the first step towards, I mean, we're still a very new show, but a first step into reaching out to the different communities to find out in ways that we can be a support. So thank you for sharing that with us. And why don't you tell everybody before we get out of there how they can find you and follow you?
Okay, so you can find me on TikTok, Quadzilla, QUADZILLA 215 on TikTok. And on Instagram, it's The Real Quadzilla 215.
Is there a fake Quadzilla out there on them Instagram streets?
Somebody already had Quadzilla 215 because I stole that word from the weightlifting community, because they all like do it like leg day, Quadzilla. Blah, blah, blah.
Oh, I got you.
And I used to be kind of a part of the weightlifting. I used to weightlift quite a bit before my injury, and my dad's part of the weightlifting community. So I was like, yeah, I'm stealing that. So that's why I put The Real Quadzilla. But that was too wordy for TikTok, because when you're like in a live comment section, people are like, the real, and I was like, I gotta
much,
put
yeah.
Quadzilla. Like, that's me. I'm just Quadzilla. And I tell people it's because I'm an incomplete quadriplegic and I monster my way through this shit.
Yes, I like it. Well,
thank you again for sharing with us.
Yeah.
And for everybody out there, don't forget to follow Queer and Far on all of our socials. Queer Far Pod. Same problem. Too long. Got to squish it together. And so we're vaxxed. I'm not waxed yet, but I will be in a couple of days.
we're vaxxed, we're waxed.
Waxed and fully packed.
Fully packed.
I'm starting to pack right now.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Queer and Far is a ManeHustle Media Podcast, produced and edited by Sharmane Fury. Co-hosted by Sharmane Fury, aka daBlasianBlerd, and Shae Nahnigans. Music is Big Band Savage Jazz by Pine Groove. If you like what you've heard on Queer and Far, please subscribe, rate, and review on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. ManeHustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.